Hey, happy Friday. This week we learned that Microsoft might not be allowed to buy Activision after all because of the UK, Germany seems to be turning against China's chip industry, and 5G actually seems to be getting slower, not faster. That's confusing, but don't worry, 5.5G is just around the corner, so that's gonna fix everything. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. This video is sponsored by Nebula. Okay, this week we start the brief with the Lenovo ThinkPhone by Motorola, which not only manages to cram two brand names into one product name, but is now also on sale in the US for a surprisingly not terrible $699, which will get you high-end-ish specs. Not bad. Next, the AMD Ryzen Z1 and Z1 Extreme came out as new chips purpose-built for handheld PC gaming devices like the Asus ROG Ally, with the Z1 Extreme packing 8 cores, 16 threads, Zen 4 graphics, and more. And while we're talking about the ROG Ally, a leak from the trusty Roland Quant and others says that the ROG Ally with the Z1 Extreme and 512GB of storage will apparently cost $700, and there'll even be a cheaper model as well without the Extreme chip. This was confirmed by Asus. The Steam Deck with the older AMD chip and 512GB of storage is $649, so the Asus could somehow unexpectedly be kind of cost competitive, as long as the software side of things holds up, that is. Wild. And speaking of gaming, Qualcomm just introduced Snapdragon Game Super Resolution for upscaling games on the fly, kind of like Nvidia's DLSS, and we can expect games to support this sometime this year. Then the Huawei Watch Ultimate just got launched, and I got one for testing. It's an Apple Watch Ultra competitor in the sense that it can do proper scuba diving and whatnot, so I'll be taking it with me on a diving trip to test it out soon. Also this week, Amazon spoiled the next Beats earbuds before Apple could announce them, and you could dunk on them for copying nothing, but Framework already made the correct dunk, which is to say that now you can see the battery, but you can still not replace it. Smooth. Next, the OnePlus tablet is coming on the 8th of May for $479 with an 11.6-inch LCD and accessories like a magnetic keyboard. WhatsApp finally decided to let you use one WhatsApp account on multiple phones any day now, and Amazon announced that it is shutting down its Halo Health division and is discontinuing all devices, though at least there will be a refund for anyone who bought a Halo device. Also this week, German engineering firm Bosch expanded outside of Germany by buying a chip factory in California to make silicon carbide chips for EVs, and a really surprising set of earnings were announced by Microsoft, Google, Intel, and more, with CEOs Satya Nadella and Sundar Pichai explaining to investors how very differently they think about the future of things like AI. I'm talking with Tristan about all things earnings and more in my podcast, The Friday Chillout, which is live now for Nebula subscribers at the link in the description. Okay, and for my first story of the week, the UK's Competition and Markets Authority announced that it would block the Activision takeover by Microsoft. The original acquisition was announced 15 months ago with $75 billion on the line, which would make this the biggest acquisition from any major tech company ever, and it kind of just shows how insanely big gaming has become. The ruling from the UK was actually focused on cloud gaming and the fact that Microsoft's Game Pass already owns some 60 to 70% market share here, and the regulators worried that the acquisition would have further strengthened that. The UK apparently reviewed 3 million internal documents and decided that the impact would be significant. Microsoft said that it was upset that it would appeal, although their chances of winning might be slim, but actually Activision was even more spicy in their response. They branded Britain as clearly closed for business and also said that the UK will stay poor with, quote, increasingly dire economic prospects. Oof. I have 3 things to say here. First of which is that if Microsoft has to walk away, heads will roll and multiple people will get fired, I think. Microsoft might have to pay Activision a $3 billion break fee if the deal fails, which would be painful alone, and they have spent more than a year working on this already. Second, this ruling clearly took the company by surprise, but the deal was so huge that it is actually being investigated in a lot of other countries too, so it's not exactly unlikely that at least one would say no despite all of Microsoft's objections. And third, cloud gaming is still really early. I mean, it only makes up about 1% of the whole gaming market, so regulating based on this kind of feels weird, but I guess regulators might think that in the past they have waited for these categories to solidify before they started regulating it, and then a lot of times regulation came too late. all the structures were already embedded. So this, I guess, is a new approach. Let me know what you think about it. Okay, and for my second story of the week, Germany seems to be set to supply the next big hit to China's chip industry. So the news is that Germany is in talks to limit the export of chemicals to China that are used to manufacture semiconductors, which would further add to all the other chip sanctions. Germany aims to slow down China's access to goods and services needed for the production of advanced semiconductors, and German corporations like Merck and BASF in particular could be limited from selling certain chemicals to China. These chemicals include high-purity solvents, etchants like acids to clear surfaces, photoresists for transferring patterns on semiconductor surfaces, and also chemicals used in wet deposition and so on. Losing access to these chemicals would of course be less devastating than losing access to the whole EUV process basically, but it would still be one more thing that China would have to substitute in case these bans actually go through. Germany has traditionally been very reluctant with sanctions on China as the country is its largest trading partner, but it seems that just like with Russia, they are slowly changing their minds here as well. On top of the chemical bans, Germany has been trying to court Taiwan to bring a TSMC fab into the country, and it has also started to change its mind on Huawei and ZTE after many years. This specifically happened after they recently got spooked by a piece of Huawei power control tool, which they found could be used to disrupt telecoms operations, which led to a review of the whole system. Awkwardly enough, the Chinese embassy said that 60% of Germany's 5G network is apparently coming from Huawei, so I guess ripping that out won't be any fun. Anyway, the details are scarce, but the direction clearly seems to be that German leadership seems more and more comfortable with the idea of stepping into the ring against China. Now, talking about 5G, my third story of the week is going to be new data showing that 5G actually got slower, not faster, in the last year. So this chart itself comes from Ookla, and it shows that 5G download speeds around the world have declined in most places year over year. That's right, they have declined. The worst declines were in Norway, Sweden, Australia, and the UK, while even South Korea and China fell by a bit. And the outliers, where speeds actually went up a little, were Canada and the US, with T-Mobile and Verizon improving their networks, but sadly their base speeds were already low, so this is a very shallow victory. So what created the slowdown? Apparently, it's just the fact that more people started using the 5G networks. That's right, simple congestion, which is weird because the whole selling point of 5G, at least one of the main ones, was that it would fix congestion. You can service way more people from a single 5G tower than from a 4G one, and we were repeatedly told that 5G would be the solution to congestion, but the reality seems a little bit more disappointing than that. Now, 20 gigabits per second is what the 5G standard laid out officially as its peak download speeds, but the median download rate of 5G in real life was less than 1% of that figure, which is pretty ridiculous. But fear not, because the next hype train for 5.5G has already started. That is definitely going to save us. Huawei in particular is touting its 5.5G technologies, with the company releasing it in a new park that it opened in Shenzhen, China, with 5.5G equipment set up everywhere. This tech, they say, will have 10 times the capabilities of 5G networks, which sounds really impressive. Okay, so quick head math here. So if 5G is running at 1% of its theoretical capacity, then 5.5G being 10 times as fast as that will mean that it will be 10% of the original capacity of a 5G. Am I doing this right? Brilliant. But hey, if you think 5G on Earth is kind of lame, don't worry. SpaceX and a company called Satellite are working on using satellites to create 5G networks in space, and we talk about that plus a bunch of other tech news like the big AI competition between Google and Microsoft and more in my podcast, The Friday Chillout, together with my researcher Tristan. And Nebula subscribers can listen or watch right now using my links in the description. The Chillout comes out right after the checkout, so you can hop over to listen or watch that right away, and we talk about topics that need a little bit more space to explain and grow, plus we also have questions from our lovely audience in the form of our mailbag and more. Now, beside my podcast, I also have a ton of other Nebula original content as well, and I'm genuinely excited that lately we can also call amazing creators like Branch Engineering, Breaking Taps, and Bobby Broccoli welcome on the platform as well, who now all create content on Nebula. Support from Nebula subscribers like you directly finances projects like my podcast and all the other stuff that we do on Nebula, and for you, it gets no ads, early access, extra content, and so on. If you use my creator link that is down in the description, a yearly subscription is just $30 a year, which is actually $20 off from the regular price, and the chunk of that subscription will go directly towards supporting me as well for as long as you are subscribed. So check it out. I hope you enjoy it, and send me your mailbag questions once you sign up.